Hi witches, I am back. I know I didn't finish up my Magical Days of the Week series. I just really did not like the way I structured them and I wanted to restructure them. I also full disclosure, deal with this super cool thing called PMDD. So if anyone else has that, hello, I feel your pain. So I was just having a really crazy brain week last week, and in the next 100 days, if you guys haven't seen on TikTok or my Instagram, which if you haven't, go follow me. Oh my gosh, the link is down below. But if you haven't seen that already, I have decided that for the next 100 days, I am going to be just really delving into my practice, really practicing for me, really trying to reconnect. And in the grand scheme of things, I'm hoping to be posting, I will be posting every day, kind of like I did back in 2021. Because when I did my Year of the Witch project, I just felt so much more connected to my practice, and I feel like it's just time to get back in tune, right? So anyways, today we're not continuing on with the days of the week. I am going to be doing that later in the month after I have I don't know, I just feel like I was reading off a list, and if you wanted that, you could just go to BuzzFeed, and I'm not trying to do that. So today I wanted to talk about pagan wedding planning because I just got done getting pagan married. So yes, let's dive right in, shall we? 5 tips for pagan partners who are looking to tie the knot, right? So the number one thing that I just want to really get out there, and I think the main thing, people told me this a lot, but I didn't really internalize it. So if you can hear this from me, please do so. But that is it's your day and it's no one else's. Your ceremony and all of its details are between you and your partner in tandem with the officiant, which we are going to touch on in just a second. So, don't let other people influence you. I definitely let people influence my decisions, and I definitely let my family influence my decisions, not so much in terms of the ceremony itself, but just other things. And it was very stressful. So please learn from my mistakes and just really set that boundary early, because it'll do you a world of good. Next, let's talk about hand fasting. Now, in America, and dare I say a couple places in Europe, pagans often opt to be hand fasted. Now, I do have a video about this, but now that I have been hand fasted myself, I feel like I should probably update it, and I have a little bit of a different perspective. Hand fasting historically has been a form of actually betrothal, so engagement, or an unofficiated wedding between two parties, right? So hand fasting itself was really common in Western Europe amongst the Celtic peoples, right? And this kind of was a practice that continued from the ancient world up through the 1500s about. The term itself, hand fasting, is presumably, it comes from the Norse word handfesta, which means to strike a bargain by joining hands, which I think is really beautiful. Now, in the modern context, we often think of hand fasting as when two people are getting married, they join their hands and they're tied together with cords. And this concept actually originates, much like a lot of neo-pagan things, in the late 60s with that advent of Wicca, when we were really getting into this beautiful world of all sorts of new age earth-based spiritualities. Whether or not you follow Wicca or Celtic neo-paganism, whatever that your practice looks like, that is kind of where our modern practice of hand fasting comes from. So basically, the way many pagans use this concept does derive from a more modern practice that has been inspired by ancient ones. And I think that's important to keep in mind when planning your wedding, right? Now for me, my husband is of kind of Irish, Scottish, English descent, and we decided together to be hand fasted to honor his ancestry as well as my spiritual beliefs, because I am a neo-pagan. Right? Now, just because hand fasting worked for us, it doesn't mean that it is the only pagan wedding practice out there. So you don't necessarily need to be hand fasted in order to have a beautiful pagan wedding ceremony. And I encourage you to look into your ancestral wedding practices to find inspiration if you're kind of I want to be married, but I don't want to be married in a church, but hand fasting is Celtic-y and meh. So I totally understand that, and I really encourage you to kind of, again, be inspired by your heritage and maybe have that as a focal point to honor as you start this new phase of your life and join these two families together, right? Now, the next thing that is really important to consider is to check in with your state's laws about officiants. So some places, I found out, are really strict about who can perform a wedding ceremony. So for example, in the state that I got married in, in Pennsylvania, there is a stipulation, like it's really old, it like is a old kind of defunct law that they don't necessarily follow to the T, you know what I mean? But it could have caused a problem, right? So there is a stipulation in the Pennsylvania laws that say that the person who is marrying you, the officiant, must have a regular congregation or must be the leader, like a religious leader of a regular congregation, in order to properly officiate a wedding. Now, if you are in a more conservative place, they might raise a couple eyebrows, especially if someone is like, you know, a pagan. They might be like, oh, that's not allowed. So luckily, most places are cool. We didn't have any problems at all. And there are instances of people being like ordained in the Universal Life Church to marry their friends as well. So just keeping that in mind. But for my babes with anxiety, a super easy way to kind of like get around this without like having to worry about it is honestly just to go get married in a secular ceremony at like the courthouse, and then having the ceremony with your chosen officiant on the day of your wedding. Maybe not the most romantic option, but definitely like a stress-free way to go about getting married legally in the eyes of the state, and then also in you know, your chosen spiritual practice, right? Now that we've talked about a lot of like historical and legal things, let's get into some fun wedding planning stuff, shall we? And let's talk about locations. Now, I personally used the website, and I am not sponsored by them, but I used the Knot to find local venues. They have like a feature where you can actually like filter through like LGBTQ friendly venues, or like a lot of the places actually like do advertise like, hey, we do like all sorts of different weddings for different faiths. So most places are pretty chill with that. The place that we chose was called Moonstone Manor, in case anyone was curious. And I'm almost positive that they advertised the fact that they had like multiple pagan weddings at that specific place. So other really great options, and some that I definitely wish I had like given more thought to, or perhaps even gone with, especially for a like smaller wedding, if you're into like micro weddings, which like honestly also would have gone with if I could do this over again. I definitely would recommend checking out a regional or national park. You can often like reserve like either multiple campsites or a covered pavilion, and some of them are actually really beautiful. There's one near me that has like this like pavilion that's like built next to like this really gorgeous like stone like ruin looking thing. It's really cool, and actually someone I know got married there, so it's kind of where the idea came from. Again, if I was having a smaller, more intimate wedding, I would definitely choose that location rather than going for like the huge venue. Also like cost factor, renting a pavilion for a couple hours versus like a big fancy wedding venue, definitely great for the budget conscious bride or groom. Finally, the last thing that I wanted to touch on today is kind of like dealing with scrutiny regarding your ceremony, or regarding like your pagan wedding plans, right? Now, in my mind, the best way to deal with this, and might sound kind of like tough love, so just bear with me, but it's how I feel, right? But basically, if someone is so offended by a spiritual path that brings you peace and joy that they feel they cannot participate in an event that is so like major to your life unless you change things about your specific day to accommodate them, they don't need to be there. And the truth is, they don't deserve to be there. You deserve to be surrounded by the people who love you, who support you, and want to see your marriage like grow and thrive. Those people who have the best intentions for you and your partner. And trust me, the ones who do love you are going to show up for you, right? I was really kind of in people's faces about why we were having a hand fasting, and that ended up working for me. But in alternative route, because I want to be sensitive, I understand like family drama is never fun, and if you're kind of like don't want to do that. Alternative route though, however, because that is for sure the Morrigan influencing my actions, an alternative route is to explain the historical practice, right? And talk about how you are honoring your ancestors. And I did kind of use this approach with some of my more religious family members who were like, what are you doing again? And that really kind of helped them to conceptualize and understand a bit better, without getting into like, and yes, I'm also a blah, blah, blah. You know, like I didn't explain my whole practice, but the historical context actually was really intriguing to some of the older people in my family. So hopefully this advice kind of like helped you learn from my mistakes. And if you guys have other questions about like planning a pagan wedding, I can do a part 2 to this if you are curious. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.